You know what most people get wrong about building a business while they're employed? They constantly think it's about hustling harder. It's about grinding more hours and pushing till you burn out because there's so much to do. Yes, there's some hustle, there's definitely a grind, but hustle alone won't get you to a profitable company that'll help you quit your day job. It's basically systems. That is what will help you scale. Hey, I'm Akash, an entrepreneur, and over the years I've built multiple businesses across industries from food and beverage to media to consulting and now even getting into the coffee business. And I've done it all while working full-time in demanding careers. In fact, in the last video, I shared how I built my first business back when I was in consulting at Deloitte. Basically 12-hour days, endless calls, corporate chaos. I'm hoping that story showed you it was possible. So if you haven't checked it out, I would highly recommend checking it out before you check out this one, or maybe even after you're done checking out this one. But one thing to call out is that people could have looked at that and said, yeah, Akash, maybe that was just luck, maybe it was a one-off. So here's another story for you where I moved to Canada and started working as a product manager at one of the biggest companies in North America, in a completely different industry, in a totally new country, and I wanted to just prove it wasn't luck. Actually, it wasn't ever about proving anything, but the fact that I was constantly drawn to building my business and scaling my business, it ended up proving the fact that it wasn't a one-time fluke. It was actually repeatable, and this time it wasn't just building something on the side, it was about scaling my company Unimedia from a six-figure company to a multi-six-figure business. And that's basically what I want to walk you through today, because I'm not just talking theory. Like I said, I've done it before, and actually twice in two very different environments. And in this video, I'm going to show you the exact system that made it possible. The one that changed everything for me. And I believe that you can use it too if you plan to build something of your own. If you're on the fence and you want to start something of your own, but you're not really sure how to go about it, then I've actually put together a resource that's going to help you. It's basically 15 steps in 15 days to help you build a profitable business or a second income source, even if you're employed. It's been a while since I started publishing this, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. And so I'd recommend checking it out. You can subscribe by hitting the first link in the description below. It's completely free and you can unsubscribe anytime you want. But I'm fairly certain that you're going to get through the entire 15-day course or the entire 15-day email set and think, wow, that's a whole lot that he's unpacked over the course of 15 days. So yeah, check it out and let me know what you think. Okay, so let me set the stage here. I just moved to Canada. It was 2022, a new country, new job, new responsibilities. And on paper, the PM role looked great. It was good pay, six figures to be honest, big exposure, and honestly interesting problems to solve. But here's the part that no one warned me about. The sheer amount of noise, just like Slack pings, endless email threads, 3 back-to-back meetings that could have been just one. And of course the famous, hey, can you jump on a quick call so that we can get through this right now? And so if you have ever been in product or project management, you know exactly what I mean, because everyone needs something from you and everything seems to be urgent. Now imagine trying to build a business on the side with all of that swirling in your head. Like by the time you're done with your day, you close your laptop at 5:30, 6:30 or even 7, you're just drained. And it's not because the work is impossible or that it was super demanding. I would even say that the kind of role I had was cakewalk compared to what I did at Deloitte. But the whole mental switching takes all your energy. And I'm sure this is something that a lot of people can relate to, because the more I talk to people here, it seems to be the reality that most people were in. And unlike my Deloitte days, I couldn't just brute force my way through it by just waking up at 5 and grinding in an empty office. This was actually a little different. And so I had to approach it differently, especially because I was looking to scale my company and wasn't just starting a company from scratch. And so let's actually talk about the breaking point or the inflection point. There's always this one moment or one point that completely changes it for you. And so for me, it was this one evening where I remember I had blocked time to work on Unimedia, and I had this long list of things I wanted to get done. And I remember I just sat there just staring at this list on my task management app. I just felt paralyzed almost. Maybe paralyzed is an overstatement, but I remember just looking at the list and thinking, where do I start? I don't even know what to do here. It felt like an overwhelm, It felt like there was so much that I had to do, and I knew that if I took the first step, it's going to help, but I just didn't want to take the first step. Yeah, that was a little bit of a weird situation because I normally don't find myself in those situations, right? So I remember I just like shut the lid of my laptop and just went out for a walk. And then it really hit me that if I kept trying to find the right time or the perfect window of peace and quiet, I was never going to make progress. And I realized that it wasn't really about needing more hours, it was just about having structure. I needed a system that could withstand the chaos. And I make this phase sound like it was for a short duration, but this was actually months and months that I went through this. And I also remember that when I moved to Canada initially, I was like, you know what, I can take my foot off the pedal and stop scaling the business a little bit, live life a little, focus on this day job because I was back, in the corporate life, and I was looking to kind of explore, getting to network, all of that. But I quickly realized that just doesn't fulfill me. And so I had to figure out a system, I had to figure out something that would kind of get me there. And so the biggest challenge or hurdle I faced at that point was with all of these things piling up, like every time I realized that I had to do something for Unimedia, I'd make a note of it and I'd add it to my task management list. And every single day I'd wake up, look at the list and figure out, okay, maybe I should do just 5 of these. And so move the other 10 to some other day. And I wouldn't even get through the first 5. And so I had to figure out a way to not get overwhelmed and instead focus on how I can freaking move the needle. And so I remember watching some video around that time that got me to strip it down to something ridiculously simple. At the end of every night, before shutting down for the day, I take a piece of paper. No, actually it wasn't paper. It was basically opening up Notion and writing down just 3 things I needed to do the next day for my business. And even out of those 3 things, I'd circle the most important one. And I decided that no matter what happens, I will definitely get this done before my day starts. It's not 10 things, it's not 20 things, because there were about 20, 30, 40 items in that list. Just focus on 3, and out of the 3, have 1 non-negotiable. In some case, it was like looking at the editor's cut. Other times, it was just drafting a set of outreach emails. And honestly, the point was that it had to be doable and it had to matter. And so I had to figure out ways to block out time to know that this is where I will only work on these 3 items or that 1 important item. And I realized that if I go for about 50 to 60 minutes of uninterrupted work, then I can kind of keep that going for even longer. So I came up with about 2 blocks of time, each about 60 to 70 minutes each. And that was like my sacred space, no Slack, no calls, no distractions. I used to switch on D&D. I used to keep my phone the fuck away from me. And it was just me and those 3 things I had to focus on. That in itself was a system that helped a lot, because there have been times where I'd wake up in the morning all excited to do some kind of work. And then when I actually sit down to work, I'd be like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? And I realized it's all because I didn't have clarity, or it's the other end of the spectrum where it's overwhelmed because I'm looking at 35 things. And once I knew the previous day or the previous night that these are the 3 things I'm going to work on the next day, it was fairly straightforward after that, because then I had clarity and I knew exactly what I had to do, and I could also start quantifying how many minutes or hours I needed for the activity. And so you can see that there are numerous factors here when it comes to starting a business. There are strategic decisions you have to make at the personal level. There are some psychological things here for sure. There are also like financial things you have to kind of keep in mind. And so that's actually why I put together this resource, 15 steps in 15 days to build a profitable business or a second source of income, even if you're employed. You can subscribe by hitting the first link in the description. It's completely free. You'll receive the first day's email as soon as you subscribe. So check it out and let me know what you think. And of course, there were days where things would get in the way, like of course life would get in the way, but there was still a last part of the system that completely changed things for me. It's a simple rule that I still live by today. It's basically you miss once, but never twice. Because missing once is life getting in the way, like I mentioned earlier, but missing twice, that's kind of the start of a pattern. And so that's something that has carried over to my gym routines. It's carried over to building my business, like I said. It's also carried over to activities that I have to do on a week-on-week basis as well. So I can miss 1 week, but I don't miss the next week. And oh my God, that helps so much. I think I came across this on Matt Diavella's video, if I'm not wrong, where he spoke about the 2-day rule. I think I used to use it sparingly when I was in India, but once I moved here, I actually practically saw the benefit of doing this. Because take the example of going to the gym, right? If I went every single day, that's 365 days a year. But let's assume worst case with this system in place, that no matter what, I don't skip 2 days in a row, which meant that worst case in a year, I end up hitting at least 182 days in a year, which is pretty good. 182 days in a year in terms of working out is freaking insane. Yeah, come to think of it, it's the same thing with my workouts. Like the days I don't have clarity about what I need to work out on in the gym are the days I'm just like dragging myself, I'm giving myself numerous reasons, I'm coming up with excuses and whatnot. But if I knew clearly that this is what I need to do, I'm like, okay, it's going to take me about 50 to 60 minutes to do it. I'll probably go at 4 p.m. wind up by 5 and get back to either working or whatever the fuck. And that clarity goes a long way. And on top of that, if you pad in the whole 2-day rule, like I said, it keeps you consistent for really, really long periods. And so here's how it played out, right? Like, let's say I wrote down 3 things, which is to draft a pitch deck, send 2 outreach DMs, and review a video edit. By the time I hit those 2 focus blocks the next day, I didn't waste a second deciding what to do. Like I already knew, right? And in those 60 to 70 minutes, I'd usually knock out 1 or 2. And the rest I'd get done, in the second block. And like I mentioned earlier, once I got through like 50 or 60 minutes of work, it was fairly easy for me to go another hour. And so like I said, if something slipped up, that's fine, life happens, but I try my best to not allow it to slip up twice. It was honestly weirdly freeing because I am this overthinker that's constantly trying to overanalyze, constantly trying to come up with different reasons, trying to justify every single thing, trying to be as productive as I possibly can. And so when I have a system I can rely on and, kind of fall back on, it was very weirdly freeing. Like it really, really helped because now I knew exactly what I had to do. And I completely stopped negotiating with myself. Like I mentioned in my previous video, like you can't start convincing yourself on a daily basis to show up and do the work. That is not sustainable. Like I didn't need motivation. I didn't need to like wait for, a burst of energy. I just followed this brain-numbingly stupid system. So that's the same thing I tell you. Like think about what your cadence is like, what is your limit, how can you operate in the most efficient way possible, trying to be as productive as possible. And again, don't mistake this for just being busy, just getting on a call and all of that doesn't matter. What I'm talking about is deep, intentional, focused work. Things that really move the needle. With building a business, you can try and tweak the website, add a few things here, trying to perfect the edges, round it up a little bit more, but no one gives a shit about all of that. What you need to do with your business is think about how you can sell more. Think about how you can scale more. Think about things that really, like I said, really, really move the needle. And so I remember the first year of working my day job, there was like a slump when it came to my business. But once I started doing this consistently and showing up consistently, like everything shifted. Like Unimedia went from a low 6-figure company to a multi 6-figure business. And it wasn't like it happened overnight and it wasn't in some glamorous, explosive way. It was very steady. And I think the main reason why we were able to scale a little quickly was because the business already had strong roots and was something I'd worked on like years, even before moving into Canada. The client work got smoother. I stopped overthinking. I started making the right hires. Decisions were faster because I wasn't juggling those 100 things anymore. It was just those 3 things that mattered every single day. And all that overwhelm I used to feel before, that dropped drastically. It's almost like that changed overnight because, and again, I speak for myself, but I'm sure this might apply to you too. When I know what I'm working on and I know when I'm going to do it, the entire mental load lightens. And the biggest takeaway from this video that I think most people miss is that most people never get to that point. They don't get beyond that slump. And in my case, it was basically scaling a business that already existed, but I had enough on my plate with my day job. And so most people, who are smart and talented, they try to convince themselves and try to find reasons and just justify the situation as much as they can. But they chase motivation, they chase perfect timing. But the real truth is that if you don't build your own system, you're basically going to end up living inside someone else's system. It's either your boss's deadlines, it's your team's priorities, it's your inbox, whatever that is, your calendar. And then at the end of the day, you'll just convince yourself you're, being busy or you're being productive, but you're not really being productive. And so what I'm trying to say is that if it's always been your calling and your vision to build something of your own, then you really need to make time for it. You need to spend time with the idea of how do you build systems around it so that you can actually keep doing this in the long run. Because the only thing, I can assure you, the only freaking thing that will get you past that slump, and not just a slump, like if it has to get to the point where you have a profitable venture, something that you can confidently and proudly call your own, the only thing that will really matter is if you're consistent. And that's something that has been a common underlying pattern or trend with anyone. Talk to any founder, talk to any entrepreneur, anyone who's actually gone through this will tell you that they stayed consistent in the long run. And not just that, it was never easy for them either. Not a single entrepreneur has said, oh, this was easy. This was not a big deal at all. And so what you really need to do is figure out how do you play the long game. Like you need to figure out what is the system you're building for yourself. Because at the end of the day, like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have your own system, you're basically conforming to someone else's system. And deep down, you'll know you're just reacting, You're not making progress on your actual thing, something that's important to you. But hey, if that's not important to you, and honestly, you don't want to build something of your own, then that's fine. That's completely fine. That's your prerogative. That's okay. But I'll also be like, why are you watching this video? It's like what, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes into the video and you're still here? And so if you're here, it's clearly important to you. And my simple, humble suggestion is sit down with your thoughts, think through a system that gets you to play the long game. You need to play the long game. You need to be in the arena and play the long game. That's the only way to go about this. And so like I said, there are so many things here, right? I'm sure you've faced it if you've ever been in that situation or in my shoes. And I think there are a lot of factors here and a lot of things you can do very nimbly and a very lean model for you to actually validate a business idea. And that's exactly why I put together this resource of 15 steps in 15 days to build a profitable business even if you're employed, basically helping you build a second source of income. And so you can actually subscribe to it by clicking on the first link in the description. You can unsubscribe anytime you want and it's completely free. Check it out and let me know what you think. And so here's my challenge to you. Like, don't just try to hustle harder and don't wait for motivation. Don't just sit there in front of your laptop thinking you're just chipping away and you're killing it when actually you're just doing, shallow work. So what you really need to do is grapple with your thoughts, think through what are the challenges you're facing and build your own system. And like in my case, I picked 3 things a day and that was my non-negotiable. So you pick what works for you. 3 things for me, 2 focus blocks a day, miss once, never twice, and cut everything that doesn't move the needle. That is honestly how I scaled a 6-figure business into a multi-6-figure business while working full-time. Honestly, if this resonated with you and it really helped, then hit the subscribe button, because in the next video, I'm going to go even deeper into that one growth hack that actually matters and what I mentioned earlier, consistency. It's not for a week, it's not for a month. You need to be long enough in the game for compounding to kick in. Watch out for the next video and I'll see you on the next one.